You're listening to the Valley Current.
Hi, Jack.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Good to meet you. How have you been?
You too. Very good, thank you. Very good. How are you?
Looks like you're off to the races with this company, which has only been in existence for a few years, right?
Yeah. It's been about 5 years. It's been this past year especially has been pretty awesome. So
I mean, let's just say for the purpose of the podcast, I've probably been one of your earliest testers,
you were,
users, right? When
and
you had a slightly different name, which was called Alexi with an SEI, which is hard to
right,
type, but it looks like you found the right domain name, Alexi, ALEXI.com,
correct,
not Lexus, Alexi. So it's like
right,
almost like a young, hip version of what
right.
Lexus should
Yeah,
be. And
yep.
I want to ask you the journey, but let me just give the listeners 5 minutes about 50 years of using automated legal research or even computerized legal research, because I've been at this for quite a while. And when we started, of course, everything was in print book format, and the personal computer really didn't exist. And there were these big machines that Lexus had, ginormous machines that cost quite a bit of money. And they spewed out this nasty rolled printed fax-like paper. And people would say, no, this is not the same. You have to use the books. And of course, West was really the predominant monopolist, if you want to call them that, because they had this keynote system that allowed you to search through a summary keynote by hand using indexes and various ways that they taught in law school, which of course, I don't know what they teach now. It's got to be all automated. It'd be interesting to know. But Lexus was challenging that monopoly and ultimately became a bit of a co-equal or an oligopoly. Maybe they still are with Westlaw. Of course, Westlaw quickly went to computerization as well. And then we had a bunch of little companies, like we even saw one of them, Case Text, who was a guy from Stanford, Jake Heller, I think is his name. Yeah. And Jake was a Stanford student who didn't want to become a lawyer, and he wanted to start a company. And it's a great story, and I won't repeat the podcast. It's available. But he was like raising money, and I said to him, how are you going to shatter this oligopoly? These are two giants. And he said, oh, well, this stuff is all public domain, and really our mission is to try to make it easily accessible. And I don't really think they had any idea of AI at that point. Maybe they did, and they weren't disclosing it. But conceptually, it was just make it a lot easier to get access to the statutes and the case law, and make it like Google, which is just a little search bar. And you don't have to know these sophisticated commands. You don't have to take any training. And I think he accomplished that. Now, I think he sold out to West, and I think that somehow maybe became this Westlaw Precision, which I have to say it's an interesting question, because lawyers are generally reluctant. I have a master's degree in computer science, so I know a little bit about how computers work, and I've been helping software companies for many decades. But most lawyers are very, very reluctant to believe that a computer could give you the kind of research quality that a, quote, hand version. Now, it's never really hand version. You're always using the computer to some degree to find stuff. The only question is how you go about finding it, and then how do you go about compiling it, and how do you go about synthesizing it into something that's coherent and can be turned into a brief, because that's what judges want. And that's what they expect. And they don't expect some automatic computer spun out version. Of course, there have been some lawyers that have done that. So now that was a lot of my background going into discovering what you guys were doing and saying, oh, this is interesting. Let's see where this goes. And then testing it against the various ways we additionally do research, which is by hand as well as by Westlaw. I think we also have a Lexis account, although I haven't done kind of a three-way comparison. And I think more and more lawyers are starting to get comfortable with there actually is a lot of value to getting results that are more automated than what might be called, like you can even use Google for legal research if you want. There's, cases.google.com that'll give you that research. So tell me how you decided to get in the game 5 years ago, because most people would have been like, man, there's two big oligopolists in this field, and maybe this little young upstart called Casetext. I don't know if I can make this happen. So how did you get the idea?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I appreciate that summary. I think a great overview. It's really important to look at the whole context. I think that is critical for sure. And again, appreciate you being an early customer too, and giving feedback. It's super helpful. So I think there's a really important concept that I always go back to, and we talk about a lot at our company, is that there's a really, in my view, a really important difference between startups and incumbent large legacy providers like Westlaw, Thomson Reuters, and LexisNexis. And it's the asymmetries in outcomes, right? That large companies have everything to lose and nothing really more to gain. Startups have everything to gain and nothing really to lose. Right. And I really think this is core to the dynamic that allows for disruption to happen. It allows for innovation in really important ways to come from startup companies. Right. And it allows startup companies to try new ideas that if somebody at a large company tried, they would get fired. And so this is my core belief, is that this is where innovation really happens, is in startup companies that can try new ideas, get some capital to really experiment with it. And it was when I was in law school, I come from a software background also, but when I was in law school, the first versions of these language models were coming out, and there were some really key papers around that time, 2017, that were just coming out, and the rate of improvement in modeling language, being able to represent the meaning of language with numbers, the ability to do math with the meaning in language was just improving significantly. And so it just became obvious AI was going to have a dramatic impact on the legal field, and building an AI that knew the law just became my kind of mental focus and obsession. And then it resulted into starting the company with my co-founder, now CTO.
So you went to law school in Canada? Am I detecting a Canadian accent?
Yeah.
Where did you go in Canada?
I was at Queen's University, just outside of Toronto.
Okay, and typically most people want to graduate and then go to some big firm and make some big bucks and pay back student debt. I take it you were like, no, this is way more interesting. A little bit like Jake Heller. This is way more interesting to do something with software and maybe build a company, as opposed to apprenticing for what might be 10 years to partnership or some crazy like that. I mean, when I joined David Stafford, Kelman and Fenwick, it was thought that, hey, if you could become partner in 7 years, you were doing really well. I became partner like in 5, but I worked like a dog and probably did 10 years worth of work. And then I came to realize, hey, I actually like working with these smaller, younger companies that don't have capital yet and that want to use friends and family money, want to bootstrap, and really want to kind of get to the next level before they go out to venture capital. And that wasn't consistent with running a firm that by the time which was many years ago, when we got to like 150 lawyers, it was a big firm back then. I mean, it's going back 40 years. And I was like, you guys are really big and you don't want to take the little startups that I think become the next Apples. We had started Apple Computer. Jobs and Wozniak came in, wanting to give us stock, and like idiots, we didn't take it. I mean, it's a great story. And I said, you guys are missing the opportunity space that's here in Silicon Valley. And they were like, yeah, they have a goofy name for the company. Maybe they'll succeed, but they'll probably likely fail because so many companies do fail. And particularly in what I would call an area where there are big incumbents. And I agree with you. The startup has a way to make something happen that the big companies just are reluctant to do. But still, the big companies can catch up. And I guess that represents what's going on through acquisition, I suppose, which maybe becomes where your company ultimately gets its liquidity event, because I don't see a lot of companies going public these days. But I suppose if you take the long run, you could become quite a substantial company, and maybe you would go public at some level. I mean, that's not impossible. I don't know if you have those aspirations at this point.
Oh, certainly. I think there's something to be said for an AI first company having the ability to become the next generational company in this market. I think it's needed. I think that AI first mentality is integral, I think, to being the leader for the next several decades. And certainly that's what we aspire to do. I think as we go through various cycles of funding and what the market looks like, we do have investors, we do have stakeholders. We have to do what's right for our customers and everyone also. But yeah, that certainly is our goal and we think setting it up in a right way. Part of the name change with A and I with Lex in the middle, it was key to kind of building this blank canvas where we felt we could build the brand and the company to sustain through this next generation that AI is going to be the dominant feature in. So
when you were in the last year or two of law school, I take it you were like, there's just more interesting stuff happening than going to work for some big, medium, or small law firm. And like literally right out of law school, you said, let's form a business, you and your colleague from law school.
Yeah. It was, it's interesting looking back in hindsight, but yeah, at the time it just felt building a capital asset felt far more meaningful at the time. And I think I still, not like the professional services, the legal services, I have a tremendous respect for what incredible lawyers do. I just knew I was not going to be one of them. I love the law. I really, law school is amazing. You get to read really interesting things all the time, debate really interesting concepts, but it just became clear, I think, with, I wasn't going to be a part of the more traditional professional services, but building technology that can impact the industry was far more suited for me, I think. Yeah.
And who was the colleague that you ended up co-founding the business with?
Yeah, Sam Bassine. He's was an aerospace engineer and was working at Bombardier at the time. And brilliant guy. The kind of guy that when he was at Bombardier, there was some vendor trying to sell them some software. I think it was a $150,000 annual contract. He went away and built essentially the same functionality in a weekend, and went back to his supervisor and said, "Yeah, we don't need to buy this software anymore." So. Just a brilliant guy, and has been tremendous for the company.
So you were the subject matter expert on the law, and he was the subject matter expert on the software engineering. Is that the way this went?
Yeah, I think for a little bit, it became clear pretty quickly. Like I was very involved in the technology right from the beginning, also, I had just enough knowledge around the law to help organize an engineering team and get some products started. But very quickly, we needed other experts, people who really knew the law, who knew how these products should work for customers. We had to bring those people involved, and so I'm certainly the ultimate generalist. There's lots of people within the company that know way more than I do about each individual component. But yeah.
I mean, it's when you think about it, you've accomplished a lot in 5 years, because it sounds like you bootstrapped with just a couple of people. You didn't go out and get $1 billion worth of venture
Right.
capital. You didn't have like the open AI. Hey, I'm the Y Combinator guy, so I'm Sam Altman. Everyone knows me. I'm
Right.
trusted. I can raise a lot of money pretty quickly. You were more like, hey, I'm a newbie out of law school that happens to have some brilliant ideas in an area where AI first has not been the way the incumbents have operated.
Mm-hmm.
You're operating that way, and you built a great product, and we like using it. We continue to test it because there's still a lot of skeptics in the
Yeah.
firm that are like, I don't know what you're doing here, man, but I'm not sure this is going to work. And of course, they're hypercritical, and they're hypercritical about
Yeah.
everything: Westlaw, Lexis, case law, case text,
Sure.
you name it. And of course, I have to say, you could have a field day from a marketing point of view by just giving a freebie. This is what Jake did in Case Text. Give a freebie on, okay, we'll let you freely search for like all of the Musk litigations, all of the reported Musk cases, all of Elon Musk's docket, or for that matter, Donald Trump. I mean, or maybe Trump and Musk, because we keep saying they're like building a whole new group of decisions that are going to change constitutional law in America, change business law in America, change the way people think about the federal courts, the way they think about the state courts. And it's an amazing story in a way that these two guys, I guess they're technically both billionaires. Obviously, Musk, much more of a multi-billionaire, maybe the next trillionaire than Donald. I couldn't almost remember his name. Than Donald Trump. It's an amazing story. If you gave that stuff away and like literally said to people, hack it and tell us where we can improve it. Like, we want you to really help us, but it's going to be limited to a subset of just all the cases, maybe from the beginning of time, even, because they've had a lot of cases. I mean, look, he's got all kinds of history. Trump does. Musk probably does too. It'd be an interesting deliverable, and I'm sure it would get you on the front page of the New York Times. And the reason I was joking to someone recently, and I said, I just want an app that allows me to press one button to understand what the latest news is about what's going on in the Trump litigation docket. And you could provide that tool. I'm pretty sure you could do it. You have technology that can generate and spin up things pretty quickly. And I think people would be pretty amazed by what it does. Now, maybe there'd be some hallucination, maybe there'd be some errors, and maybe you get sued by Trump, which would be probably the best thing to ever happen to you from a marketing point of view. And a lot of this is marketing, because lawyers are very slow, as you probably have figured out. The sales cycle must be awful. Lawyers are the worst because they're naysayers. Everything is no. They're not like other people that say, oh, you've given me a tool that can really help me like write a few paragraphs of marketing stuff, the way ChatGPT is changing the world of marketing for sure. They don't think that way. Lawyers think, no, if I don't do it the traditional way, some judge is going to scold me, or bar association is going to be upset, or an ethics lawyer or an ethics panel. So there's so much context there. So I have to applaud you that you're doing something marvelous. And the only real question becomes, how do you get the brand to become like second nature to people, where they just say, well, let's see what Alexi says, the way you could say, some people like to say, well, let's see what Siri says, or let's see what Alexa says. I guess that's an interesting question, which is, people almost talk about these things like they're people.
Yeah.
Want to do that, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that the way we think about it is that distribution, getting in front of more customers, you got to think about it in the same way you think about product. You have to innovate on product. You have to come up with something new. You have to, it has to be really compelling. And I think we're only now getting to the point where our product is we believe market leading in many ways. There's still lots to improve, of course. But our rate of improvement, we think, as we benchmark against other competitors, has continued to accelerate. But we're just getting to the point now where we think, okay, we got to innovate on distribution as much as we've been innovating on product. How do we get this into the hands of customers more and more? And I think you're probably right about the comments about lawyers and the persona that we're dealing with. But I do think the business of law is sufficiently technical that I understand why lawyers can be risk averse with tools like this. I understand why they're going to be reticent to try new things. And I put the responsibility on us as a vendor to make the product to solve these sorts of problems through the product. And so I don't blame the market in this way. This is a problem for vendors to solve.
So I'll tell you a good story about this morning for me, and I actually did lean on your product pretty hard. So hard, I think that I caused something to happen that required your customer support to respond, and they did very quickly. So I want to applaud you on that. So I had a big argument in the District Court of Appeal this morning, an important case that we had won in the Superior Court. I'm a certified appellate specialist, and this case was important to the client, and I argued it in San Jose, California, where I am right now. And they basically, I woke up like at 4 a.m, which is the way I get ready for important cases. I get up really early, and then I basically double check. I mean, if I had like a bunch of associates with me, which for this case I didn't, I would be like delegating to them, find this, find that, update this, update that, shepherdize. I don't even use that term anymore, but shepherdize was kind of the famous term for tracking down, see if there's any changes in the law, because you don't want to be flat-footed, surprised that, that case that you cited that was central was reversed or distinguished or whatever. So I actually used your tool in like the last couple of hours of preparation to say, give me an update on this case, that case, and the other case. I mean, this is all public stuff, and I argued the case publicly. And I'll send you the audio recording, video recording. We may actually turn it into a podcast because it was an interesting argument in front of the panel today. And I was surprised, at how fast it does come back, which is good. It's almost like years ago, there was a programming language, an interactive programming language called APL. It might still be around, where you typed in a few commands and it turned back a lot of stuff. It was almost like a low code, no code kind of environment for interacting. And there was another system on the mainframe side that was called Wilbur that had a similar thing in IBM 360, 370 mainframe computing speak. And your tool, you can see as computers get faster, which they will, it's pretty fast. And so you can bang out a lot of updating very, very quickly and get a sense of, hey, is there anything out there that I've missed? And you don't get the response you would get, say, in ChatGPT, if you're imagining that that's an arguable alternative. I'm not. But there are lawyers who will probably say, I just use ChatGPT, and they've been bounced because of that.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT will say something like, our language model is limited to like November of 2023 or whatever, February of 2023. So we don't know if there's any law that dates to like the present, as in like yesterday. And I read the advance sheets. I mean, I read stuff that comes out, not every case, but the cases that I'm interested in. And so I follow along in like 12 to 25 different areas all the time. And I have to say, it was an interesting experience for about 2 hours. I was kind of in the zone with Alexi in basically getting updates on things. And what I wanted, which I think maybe you guys will head in this direction, this is what Case Text did, upload the whole friggin' brief as a PDF and just bang on, say, tell me if there's any cases that since whenever the last update was done on our brief, which was probably last year, in like the last 12 months, if there's anything that has changed that I want to know about, and then give me the memo or something that I can quickly absorb. And I think that's coming. And I'm sure it's coming. And I'm sure that that's the battleground for people that want this instantaneous way to know they're on a solid footing in what they do. And that's, to me, priceless.
Yeah, totally.
Because you don't have to worry about, the associate's called in sick, or the associate doesn't feel well this morning, or a million different excuses. You're just in the zone doing it. And in 2 hours of my time, this might be like 20 hours of some associate's time. It's a very
Yeah.
different thing when you've been practicing for over 45 years and you just
Right.
know the law, and then you're just looking to see if there's something that came out and you just want some help finding it in case you may have missed it. Right.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, when you mentioned ChatGPT, and we refer to these models as these foundational models, right? These
Right.
open domain models that power ChatGPT, and they're very general, right? They're distinguished from like domain specific models, and
Right.
they've kind of opened up the gates to building domain specific applications. Once you solve for language that it can do things like summarize really quite well or rephrase things really quite well, what we think of as these like language specific tasks. And now it's up to companies like ours and others to build the domain specific AI, right? That transcends this language task. And when you combine them together, that's when you get these really compelling applications. So we're just at the beginning now with these foundational models getting as good as they are, have an opportunity to build really highly intelligent domain specific applications that are really something, but we're right at the beginning. So yeah.
You're right at the beginning. And what you probably realize is where it's next going to go, because this is just inevitable, is the clients don't even want the 25-page memo that Alexi put out. They don't even want that. What they want, the lawyers want it because they always believe that more is better. I'm one that believes less is more, but what the clients want, and I think you could probably get there eventually pretty quickly, is you feed all that 25 pages or 15 or whatever comes back. It could range to even a shorter number, but let's call it 25 pages because you guys are providing a lot of value there because it's a lot of information. And I like it personally because it gives you the flavor of what the real case holdings are. You move that into something that generates a PowerPoint and a summary of your detailed quoting, because you're doing a lot of detailed quoting from the cases. And that PowerPoint becomes like the executive 5-page PowerPoint opener that allows you to sort of unwind or open the onion, into the deeper and deeper parts. And that's often what most executives want, which is, okay, the basic area of law is summarized in these 5 slides, which might have like 5 bullets each, is like 25 points. And I think that kind of deliverable would really start to excite people, because they would say, I don't have to read 25 pages to get the gist of an area and decide whether more or less needs to be done in a particular point. Now, you still have the 25 pages behind it. And obviously, most lawyers who are really good at what they do, particularly people who do a lot of writing like I do, you use a computer setup where you have like the computer that's doing the what I'll call the research work, the computer that has the screen or the connected screen that has the writing that you're doing. So you've got your brief open, you got your research tool open, and then maybe you have a third screen that has like your email system, and they're all connected to one computer. And you're not really taxing the computer. You just got this big array. And a lot of people, when you tell them that that's the way you work, they're like, I didn't know you could have 2 screens connected to one laptop. Like they have they have the foggiest idea, but everyone that knows how to be effective and knows how to use their time well, they always have this multi-screen setup. In fact, some of them have like 6 screens. I mean, I my limit is basically 3. I've seen some lawyers with 6, and I think that's just crazy. And now, of course, if you go to the Apple store and you put on these Apple Vision Pros, you have like 12 screens open, and you're like, your head is like spinning around. You can have multiple things going on in what seems like this, space that's around your head. And I don't know if they're just going to get people to feel like they're taxing their brains too hard, but you can see what it's doing. It's saying we will get in front of you as much information as you can absorb. And if you're really good at absorbing and synthesizing and good at speaking with some clarity, we'll let the text recognition happen very quickly. So you might be able to knock out a brief that takes a week for other lawyers in like a day. And that's a big
Right.
productivity improvement
Yeah. Yeah.
and
For
needed, because clients don't want to spend a fortune on something that might be read by a judge for 20 minutes or
Right.
30. I mean, I clerked for a judge on the Court of Appeal, and I knew, he would read a brief, but frankly, there were so many briefs he was reading and that I was reading, he'd say, don't spend more than an hour with this. You're going to get the gist of it from the table of contents. Yeah, maybe there's 2 or 3 points you have to delve into. They didn't spend days reading briefs. The Supreme Court doesn't spend days reading the multiple amicus briefs. They have somebody summarizing them and seeing if there's
Right.
anything new in them. But people don't get that sometimes you really don't need to have this horrendous number of hours put in. And of course, your tool is going to help cut down on the number of hours. And the real question is, do you stay ahead? Because right now, my sense of it is you're ahead of Lexis and ahead of Westlaw, but it's hard for me to interpret whether Westlaw might be delivering some other value that you're not delivering. And so
Sure.
it's hard to do this side by side comparison. We've done some of it. Right now, we're trying to still evaluate it. But in general, right now, I think our leaning is towards more your tool. I have to tell you, the Westlaw guy wants to redo the contract. And I jokingly said to him, you're like 5 times higher than these guys at Alexi. And I said, you're not delivering 5 times the value. And he said, no, that's crazy. We've been around forever. We've got all this great stuff. And I just laugh at him and say, at some point you don't need, and I know lawyers who aren't even they're using Google. They're not even using anything that involves paying anyone. And they say between Google and just searching on the internet, they're fine with what they do.
Right.
I don't know that I feel that way, frankly, but I have to tell you, I think it's an interesting question about how this competitive landscape plays out, because I do think at some level you're delivering a lot more value for the price than the traditional oligopolists are, which probably either means they're going to try to gobble you up really quickly, or it means that they're going to try to do some stuff that oligopolists do that you have to worry about, from a litigation point of view, right? Not that any of that should happen, but you have to.
No, for sure. Totally. Yeah. Well, no, and I appreciate that. And I think we're the things that we can do really well, we can improve so quickly. We can implement things so quickly. And I think, where we are now, we feel really good about. Where we'll be in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, we feel really good about. And so I think we're in a great spot.
Yeah, your system has never been down. I'll give you some other compliments to my way of thinking. Your system has never been down. It's fast to log in. I always have a problem getting the login to work quickly enough in Westlaw. It's a horrendous system. Their security, I think, can be improved, but you guys are fast. The results are fast. You email the results without even having to ask for it. I think that's smart. There's lots of other things that you do that I think are smart. And it looks like you have a team that's building new versions often. So it's pretty clear that you're not, staying with just a frozen version, which I think is a good thing. Your customer support is great. You respond very quickly. Overall, I would give you guys an A plus. And I have ideas for improvements. I'll put an email together that you can think about. But conceptually, it is a struggle to, just in the big picture, to imagine how you get over this distribution hurdle, because it is really the name of the game, and you don't have an Amazon that just is out there pumping stuff. There is no Foundry. Maybe Google should do that. Maybe Google should allow a store for companies like you to reach everyone, because Google is a research tool as well, but they're really more of an advertising company than they are a subscription research company. And I don't know that you want to be on the Apple store, because don't they take a lot of the profit side of this? Like if you had an Apple app that was called the Alexi app, doesn't that kind of screw up the economics for you if you do it that way?
That wouldn't be great. I think Google has been a big source of customers, referrals certainly. I think PR testimonials. I really do think a really compelling product that's delivering a lot of value. It becomes easier. People talk about it more, and so I think that's where our focus is. Yeah, but I agree, it's not easy, right? So,
you're obviously in the U.S. Are you also in Canada now?
Yeah. We started in Canada, so we're only about maybe 2 years into the US. So
Okay.
yeah.
Because I remember when you started and I started sort of putting my toe in, you only had a limited number of states. I want to say you had like 3 or 4 states, and I was like surprised to see you grew the states. Like you really did grow the states. I was like, wow, they're covering like Delaware now. Because I'm licensed in New York, I'm licensed in California, I'm licensed in Florida, DC, Washington, state of Washington, state of Oregon, state of Hawaii. I've taken a lot of bar exams in my career. Cool. My wife laughs, like she's like, "You're a glutton for punishment." But, I think I've taken my last bar exam, and there won't be another bar exam. They're just gonna have to let me in on an honorary basis. But conceptually, you're covering a lot, and I think that's hard to do because you really have to plug yourself into so many other sources of data, and there are big differences, nuanced differences. I look at them sometimes between what New York does and California does on a point, and it's interesting that overall, I think that your tool does a pretty good job. Like I've even thrown things like into the description, like, well, Delaware law has a holding that says this. What does California law do? And I think I'm going to stump it. Like, I don't know. You're asking me to traverse 2 different libraries, and it comes back with, well, here's how I would phrase the question, and I say, okay, go. And I'm surprised to see it does really a decent job. And I have to tell you, if you try to explain that to a young lawyer, young associate, or even second, third year person, well, Delaware does this, but I'm not sure California is doing it. So you got to kind of look at the Delaware, and then you have to look at California, and then you have to do a little bit of comparison. I think they would get flummoxed by that, or some would, not all, but some would be like, why can't we just pick a body of law? I have a case that has 2 contracts that are wrapped together, and one says it's governed by Delaware law, and another one that's wrapped together at the same time says it's governed by California law. So there actually is a need to figure out whether they're consistent on a particular point or different. And, that's not something that's every day of the week, but it is something that does come up. And it is something where judges will say, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but this contract under Delaware law is going to go this way, and this contract under California law is going to go another way. And I think there's even a third aspect that has New York law in it. So, you have to be able to be facile across different domains of law. And I think your tool is saying that. So how do I get you? And of course, you go online to www.alexi.com, right? And I have the logo. That's kind of the AI, right? And the shortened name.
Yeah, really appreciate you chatting with me.
Well, where are you now in Canada? In Toronto or?
Yeah, right now I'm in Toronto.
So it's got to be like 20 degrees there, right?
Today was warmer. It was almost 20 Celsius. So I don't know what that is. Maybe 50. I don't know.
You're having an early spring then.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, next time I'm in Toronto, I'll ring you up and we'll go out to lunch.
That would be awesome.
Spend
love
some time together.
Yeah.
Good. And your other team members that I've interacted with, are they in the West Coast or where are they? You probably an organization, right? They're all over the place.
Yeah, we have some in New York City. We do have some in the Bay Area also, but yeah, we're mainly remote. Most of our engineers are in the Toronto area, but
nice.
Yeah.
Well, you've done a great job. Congratulations. I wish you the best of success. I hope it really becomes a great unicorn story for you. If at some point you want me to connect you with Jay Keller so he can tell you things you need to know about the ride that's ahead, I'm happy to do that. Maybe I could put you guys together. It'd probably be fun to have all all of us on a podcast, because he did the same hike, and I was equally sort of like, man, you're going to go up Mount Everest here. I hope
that would be
good snow.
That would be an awesome.
Right.
That would be an awesome podcast for sure. I've spoken with him once before, but
he's a good guy. He'll be very supportive, even though maybe you're technically competitors. He'd actually be very supportive. He'd be very interested in kind of how you traverse some stuff. And he's a really bright guy. And eventually, for his whatever non-computer, whatever he has is over, I'm sure he could be a good resource for you at some point. Try to put this together. That'd be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Talk to you
Thank
later.
you so much,
Mark.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.